Hey, I'm Tom CREAL with High Compression Garage. Welcome to another segment of Training with the Twist. Today we're going to be going through how to do a motor swap, installing your transmission, and also aligning and priming up your your primary. Go! I'll do it again. I'm Tom CREAL with High Compression Garage. Welcome to another segment of Training with the Twist. Today what we're going to be doing is doing a motor swap in the custom bike. Installing a new motor. I'm going to be going through how to shim it, correctly torque it, also installation of your transmission, and then putting our 3-inch BDL primer together with a few items that you want to keep in mind while doing that as well. First step, what you want to do when installing a new motor, you want to prep your frame, and what I mean by that is if there's any powder coat or paint on your frame, you want to take that down to the bare metal. As you can see here, we already took this back engine mount down to the bare metal, and then we also made a template, inserted that on here for the engine mount, and then sanded that down as well. What that'll provide is a nice smooth surface for us as we shim and try to align our engine at the same time. So that's a big step that you may want to take in doing this. So first step, what we're going to do is we're going to get the engine. I'm going to pop the engine into the frame. We'll go through how to align and get that shimmed up properly. Good to have two people when you do this. As you can see, it's good to have two people when doing this. These motors aren't light. And the other reason is the person on this side can grab the main shaft, help bring it over the frame rails so you do not do any harm or damage to the paint or powder coat that you currently have on. Another item is you can put masking tape with duct tape over it, and that'll prevent any harm to your paint job or powder coat as well. So to properly shim your motor, we're going to drop our two engine bolts in the rear into place. What we're going to do is install our front engine mounting bolts. If you have a regulator rectifier mount that needs to be bolted up, right now is a good time to put that on as well. Typically those are mounted under your frame mount here in the front. Nothing will be on the top. So after we get those two front ones done, what we're going to do is we're going to torque the back bolts down, leaving the front ones loose. What that is going to do, if any shimming is needed, is going to provide it in the front. And by pulling the back end down, your engine will actually come up a little bit. It will take a feeler gauge in here and ensure that we do not need, or if we do need shims, we can do that. Good shims to use are brake caliper shims. So when you do order a caliper, keep those shims to the side if you don't use them, because we can drop those right in for the transmission, engine, and they're great consumables to keep around the shop as well, or your garage. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to torque the back bolts down and we're going to go through shimming the front end. So now that we've got our back section mounted and torqued, we're going to go to our front area of the motor and see if we need any shims at all. So what I have right now is a feeler gauge, and we're going to start with the smallest diameter feeler gauge that we have. If the feeler gauge does go under it, we have to do shims. As you can see, this is a perfectly mounted engine. I can't even get the smallest diameter feeler gauge in there. And then we're going to double check the other side as well to see if there is any left to right leniency, and the other side as well. So this motor actually does not need to be shimmed, but a lot of custom applications do need to be shimmed. After this, we're going to install our transmission. We're going to loosen up all our bolts again on our engine and keep them all loose. Now with installing our transmission, I'm going to take the smaller end, push it through, because our starter casing right here where it mounts will interfere with our oil tank. And Matt, can you grab that other end right there, lift it up and pull it through so those bolts can drop in. little bit more. Up. Perfect. We're going to go back to the transmission now and see if that needs to be shimmed. In order to do so, what we need to do, we're going to be using a 3-inch open BDL primary. This is our housing for it. We're going to be pushing this up directly on the output shaft of the transmission. The transmission has 2 dowels. We're going to make sure those are lined up and it's secured in the back. As you can see in the front now, the engine and the support right now have a big gap between them. That's because we have an offset on our transmission. So what we need to do is measure this, find the appropriate spacers to go in their spots, and insert those spacers, and then pull our plate back off and reinsert it. I'm going to measure this, and these spacers do come in 1/2 inch, 1 inch, 1 1/4, 1 1/2, and on. And as our transmission is loose, I'm going to try getting this eyeballed up pretty well. So we're looking at 1 1/2 inches off, 1 1/2 inch offset on this one. We have a 1/2 inch spacer right here and a 1 inch. So what we're going to do is put these together, pull our primary back off, reinsert these, and then bolt on our primary. There's no specific order in putting these on. Obviously you just want to make sure that you're hitting the bolt pattern. These spacers do have lips on the outside, and on the inside they do have an indentation to ensure that you do have these flush with one another if you're using multiple ones. If you are using spacers, the likelihood is you're going to need to get longer bolts than what came with your primary. And you can go to your local hardware store for that, or order them online through High Compression Garage. So now that we have that snug, we've got our spacing done, we've got our back end flush with our transmission. We're going to take in all 8 bolts for the primary as well. We're going to have 4 that directly go to the engine. And with these bolts, you never use Loctite. And if you are wanting to use something, because they are going into a cast housing, you can use anti-seize. Take these all the way in. And you do want to start these bolts again by hand. Never start it with your tool. And this is to prevent any potential cross-threading that you may not feel with the tool, but you will feel with your hands. Ensure that these bolts in the back are completely flush and recessed in the notched out area in the plate as well, because you do have your clutch basket that will ride along that and your ring gear on your clutch basket. Last thing you want is to get the heads of your bolts sheared off by your clutch basket rotating with your transmission here. I'm going to take the feeler gauge. Again, starting with the smallest diameter, and I'm going to go around on the other side of the bike and go around to all 4 mounting points on this transmission down to the frame. The front right is fine, front left is fine, rear right is fine, and the left right is fine. That's the precision you get with High Compression Garage quality materials. Your next step is going to be pulling off your primary again, bolting down loosely your transmission, and then we'll be going back through, inserting your primary back on, torquing down your transmission, and then finalizing this entire drive. We do want to make sure that your belt, if you are using a belt, that is already hooked up before you put this primary cover back, or the primary support back on, and then we can go through and put everything else together. So right now I'm going to do all that, and I'll be back with you in a minute. Alright guys, I'm back. And now what we've got done, motor is already installed, torqued down, shimmed. Our transmission is now torqued down and shimmed. Primary housing is on. And now next step is to completely install our open 3-inch primary BDL system. Check out that video at Training with the Twist. Thanks for tuning in. Make sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at High Comp Garage.